Hello. I would like to entitle this The Hybrid Age. And I would like to talk about signs of things that I see all around that are explaining what our situation here is spiritually speaking. There are signs everywhere if you're inclined to see the signs. And I'm not saying anybody isn't really, but uh, uh, so I don't personally have any visions. I've never looked out any windows and seen any visions. um, I have on occasion had night visions, uh, but anyway, I would just like to talk about things that I kind of feel like my whole life's a vision, really, because I have one big vision here. Because everywhere I look, I see things that are signs as to what the signs of the age is. Like Jesus talked about how that they could discern the weather by the the sky would be red and lowering, and he knew that it was going to be thus and thus, and what kind of weather they was going to have. But he said, what was the signs of the times you can't discern. So anyway, I would like to talk about the signs of the times. Maybe that'd be a better title for this sermon. And discerning the signs of the times right now. So the signs are all around us, everywhere. Okay, well, I can't go anywhere and do anything without seeing signs. So, like I said, my life, I just feel like everything's just one big vision. But that from the time I wake up, time I'm asleep sometimes. I'm having a vision as soon as I wake up. So anyway, I'm going to do my best to put this together. And like I say, I'm not the best at speaking, but bear with me. Okay, so here's the signs of the times that I'm discerning, and I got to use a little history to explain it. But what I find is that, and I know I'm always talking about cars, but that's how it is. Anyway, if you look out here, what you've got now is everything going on around us, the socio-economic structure, everything, geopolitics, everything right down the line is talking about what's going on. If you can see it, you can compare it. It's like, and then, I can kind of put it out in parables. I imagine people are always like, why are you always comparing something to something else to try to, that's what Jesus did. He used parables to explain things, and then whoever could get it, got it. So anyway, I don't know if you all watch Fox News, but I'll tell you a real good comparison, in my opinion, to this type of way of doing things is there's a guy on there named Greg Gutfeld. And every time, I think he's on the 5 now, it's like 5 people, a panel of people that get on there and talk about world events and everything. And every time they get Greg Gutfeld on there, he's always talking, he always uses some parable to explain something. He compares something to something else. And when he gets done, you always look at it and be like, that makes sense. That he could take a world. I heard him the other day was talking about like the world situation with the war and stuff. And he was comparing the countries involved to like I can't remember what it was, like an angry stepfather or something, and a I don't know what it was, a stepchild and this and that, and but when he got done, it was perfect. So that's kind of what I do here, is that I take things and compare them to something else, make a parable out of it, and then when I get done, it's perfect because I'm perfect. No. But anyway, humility is not one of my strong points these days. So, anyway, what I'd like to talk about is cars. Now think about this. I'm going to take these cars and I'm going to explain how this works. And explain what age we're in right now. Okay. The the cars that we have, the types of cars, there's basically three types of cars that you have out right now. And these types of cars all represent ideologies in the message, ideologies in the spiritual world. It's blatantly obvious. Okay, if you can look, like I said, if you can look around and see the vision is everything you see around you. Okay, so when I'm driving down the road and I'm looking at these different types of cars, and I'm just kind of inquisitive about, I just love auto mechanics and stuff. So naturally, I kind of get into the engineering and looking up stuff and this and that. So I seen a vision. I seen a vision of what these cars mean for us right here in the spiritual. And like I said, you've got three different kinds. You've got the classic internal combustion car. That's your regular car. It doesn't have any electric assisted motor to it, or it doesn't just run purely on electric. So you've got your plain old gasoline engine car, like what I drive. Okay, in the natural, not spiritual, and then you've got the hybrid car. The hybrid car, I don't know if I should draw it out, but the regular internal combustion engine car, it's just you use the piston, blah blah blah, to turn a crankshaft. It's got a spark plug in the top. Okay, it's a regular combustion engine car. Then you've got the hybrid engine car. How's my drawing, wifey? Anyway, so then you got the hybrid engine car. Okay, well, the hybrid engine, how it works is it's got an internal combustion engine, a gas engine, but it's got it runs to an electric engine. Runs to an electric engine, and then it's powered by a regular gas engine and an electric engine. Okay, this is called a hybrid engine. How it works is that you get better gas mileage if you can hybridize an electric engine with a gas engine. They've been doing this in trains, as far as I know. Diesel, what are they? Diesel electric trains for years. Okay, this is not really, in a way, new technology, but it is for cars in a way. So as far as I know, I'm pretty sure that's how trains work. But anyway, and lots of other things. A submarine basically works on that same concept, because it's got to be below water, so you can't use an internal combustion engine below water, because it just won't work. So you got to use electric below, and then come up and recharge your batteries with a diesel engine. That's, at least that's how old submarines used to work. But anyway, so there are some things that have hybrid. But anyway, talking about cars, it's hybrid electric, hybrid gas. Okay, and in the process of that, it gets better gas mileage. Okay, but a little bit more high tech than just a regular internal combustion engine. Then you have basically the Tesla. There's an ad for Elon Musk. Then you have the regular electric car, and it's just, see, this hybrid engine has battery. I should have put the battery in it. The battery, and this charges the regular combustion engine charges the battery, and then the battery. All three work together. Okay, but it's just two types of engines, and then you have just a plain old electric motor. With a battery car. Okay, these are the ones that are coming in now. Okay, these are your plain electric car. Okay, now, why did I say all that? Each one of these represent a thought process now out here in the message. Okay, it's pretty obvious to me that, and I'm going to explain to you that what people think is the message for this hour and this day is not the message for this hour and this day. Okay, the internal combustion engine, that's the engine that got us where we're at now. Okay, That's your third coming engine. Okay, it's as simple as that. That is the core engine that, you know, it's kind of a little bit of a throwback, but it's the core engine that got us where we're at. Then you've got the hybrid engine, which is what I propose, which is the idea that you can hybridize old and modern technology and come out better off. If you hybridize old and modern technology, you actually come out better off. I'll explain that. And I would like to say this for anybody, you know, so that nobody misunderstands, I'm not talking about hybridizing the word at all. Not at all. That's not what I'm talking about. Okay, I'm just using this to explain what's going on, because I'm not for hybridizing the word at all. That's not what I'm talking about. But I am for hybridizing the messages as they stand right now, because I think that's what William Branham did. He hybridized. He took, like I'm always saying, he took the bones of the Baptists and he took the blubber of the Pentecostals and put it together and made a message. So William Branham really was a hybridizer before if anybody wants to call me a hybridizer, William Branham was the original hybridizer, you know, or whoever before him, but I just use William Branham. He was a hybridizer. He didn't hybridize the word. You know, he certainly did not hybridize the word, but he hybridized the ages to put them together to make the word work better. Okay, so anyway, to get a more clear understanding on what was going on. So, and then the third thing out here, the third engine choice you have is the electric car, the purely electric car. Okay, that is your love divine mentality. That is the most high-tech, essentially, mentality out here. Okay, and I propose that everybody seems to think that's the message of the hour. No, absolutely not. Because, and here's why. Because these electric cars, what you have is you have to think of things in terms of how it works in the field. And what I mean is in the field is on the ground. How it works across the whole spectrum. Okay. Now, if you live in, let's say, I don't know, California or something, and they've got, like, I live in West Virginia, okay? Now, maybe it's a bit of a bad example, but nonetheless, we don't have the technology here to operate a purely electric car. I've looked into it because I love new technology. Okay, now sometimes it annoys me, but I still like checking on new technology. So, but we don't have the infrastructure here to be able to operate an electric car. Basically, hardly at all, just barely. Okay, you know, like for example, we live in an apartment here, and you know, as far as I know, in West Virginia, electric car charging stations at apartments are unheard of. Okay, now in California, you know, you go somewhere like that, you go somewhere it's more advanced, basically, engineeringly speaking, and they'll have like car charging stations at an apartment. So a person out there could live in an apartment or live, you know, anywhere basically, and charge their car and get an electric car, a fully electric car, and charge it and make it work. Okay, so there are certain places that it does work. Now, with some exceptions of still some problems, but you know, like range might be limited, and because it's like this, even if you can charge your car, and let's say you just drive around in Los Angeles, California, and most of the time, if you want to take that car on a trip across the country, then you're going to run into issues about being able to charge it, and you're going to have to wait to be able to charge it and this and that. So it's like this, the very best situation that you can, most ideal situation that you can find for electric cars, it's still got issues, okay? So, but it does, you know, hypothetically work a little better there. Okay, so anyway, what I want to say is this, is that basically, in a way, let's say probably for the average earning person out here. See, what we got now, you know, like I said, the signs are all around. Gas is going up like crazy, okay? So, that's a sign. That's a sign of the times, sign of the way things are working here. So, and then all these cars matter because, you know, like gas is oil, and oil is, if you compare that over to the spiritual, oil is revelation and understanding. So it's, it's like, how does your car is your spiritual message, it's your mode of transportation spiritually, and it's like, how does that function with the price of oil, with the price of revelation, spiritual understanding? You see, all this goes together. It's all, like I said, it's one big vision. Okay, so anyway, so the electric car, how this works is that people are on this bandwagon of pushing the electric cars right now and saying, oh, well, that's the way to go. Okay, well, here in the real world, that don't work out so well. Okay, and everybody says, well, that's the, electric cars are the new thing, the new wave, the new age, which they are. But how it works is that here in the real world, across the board, across from all situations, top to bottom, that doesn't work out best. An electric car does not work out best, and it goes to prove right now because they're not everywhere. I mean, not everybody out here is buying electric cars because it just don't work out the best right now. Okay, now here's the thing. One day, see, this is a thing that people tend to, no pun intended, drive past. One day, electric cars, one day everything's probably, I don't know, we'll see, but I imagine one day, based on how things go, one day probably pretty much everything will be electric cars. So the question becomes to me then, I'm trying to make my point here, and if somebody would ask me, well, if everything's going to be electric cars, why don't you just go ahead and join in on the bandwagon and get an electric car? How are you saying that the hybrid cars and the hybrid message is better than the fully electric message if you're claiming that one day everything is going to be electric cars anyhow? That's a good question. Okay, that's stuff I drive down the road and think about because I got a long drive to work, so I got a lot of time to think. So that's another reason why I consider all this stuff, is because I got a long drive to work and gas is going up $5-7 or whatever it goes to. Then I got, it gets my brain churning as to what I got to deal with here in the natural, and then it starts relating over to the spiritual, and then all this stuff starts coming to me. So anyway, but that's a good question, isn't it? How can I claim that? Let me explain to you how this works. See, that's a misconception. How it works is that by the time that, y'all mark my words, by the time that we get to where the world is pretty much electric cars primarily, hypothetically, in the future, when we get to that point, the world won't look anything like it does now. Okay, you gotta figure that, whenever that happens, the world is going to be totally different around it. Okay, so I can give you an example of that. What I'm saying is that right now, that does not work out best. On the ground, it does not work out best. And by the time that electric cars, fully electric cars, do work out best, by the time that happens, everything around the electric cars, everything that's going on around here is going to be totally different to where you can't compare. That day won't be comparable exactly with this day. And I'll tell you why. Because you're going to have, you got, the world around it is changing. Okay? Whenever you, like for example, we're going into the digital age and all this. Well, people are going to be working more from home. They're not, maybe the situation of where that they're going to need to drive long distances is not going to be as big of a problem by the time that happens. You have that now. Not everybody's working from home now. It's people still, like I said, this is a hybrid age. You got the home stuff starting to come in, working from home. You got, delivery services starting to come in. You got, but there's a lot of us out here that we drive an hour to work or wherever, and it's so the world right now the world itself is not set up for just purely electric cars on the whole, okay. But of course, you've got to have these electric car people out here, just like you've got to have the internal combustion people out here, and just like you got to have me, okay. So, but anyway, so what I'm saying is that everything is going to be changed at that time. It's not going to be the same. When the day of the electric car does finally come to fruition to where it's going to work, the whole world will be changed, and it won't look anything like it does now. So you can't compare what we're doing right now to that day. Okay, I hope you're with me. because I'm telling you something good here, and I'm telling you something that'll clear a lot of issues up. I'll give you a good example of this, spiritually speaking. Now that's a natural example, but I'm going to give you a spiritual example. Like I'm always saying about these, you run it back to William Branham's day. It's so easy because we know William Branham's message so good. We can, and everything that was going on, it's fairly recent history of things. And it's a little harder when you start comparing it to like ancient Israel and stuff because you got, you don't know you got to kind of try to figure out what's going on. It's really kind of a revelation, more of a revelation to get back to that point because you're just relying on revelation of what you assume was going on. But with William Branham's day, you can look back. It's the 1960s. It's not that distant. Okay, you can I grew up watching history and stuff, and the 1960s. I didn't even have to watch history because my mom and dad and my uncle was in Vietnam and stuff. That they talked about all that what was going on back in the day, and it wasn't that far away. So but we can do a good accurate comparison based on that. Is what I'm saying here, because it's not so far away anyway. So you go back to William Branham's day. Now, what did they have? Like I said, Pentecostals, William Branham, and the Baptists. Okay. So what was going on? You had the Baptists were obviously the message before, then the Pentecostals came along, and then William Branham came along. But William Branham's message, even though he kind of came along afterwards, was kind of a combination of those two. It was, like I said, it was a hybridization of blubber and bones to make it work. Okay, and so what did you have? You had, spiritually speaking, it's the exact same thing as what's going on here with these cards right now. I'm just using this to make a comparison. You had the Pentecostals who were listening to rock and roll in the church. I know I've said this 100 times, but it's such a good comparison. They were listening to rock and roll in the church at that time. Okay? So, but the message for that hour was not rock and roll in the church. The message for that hour was William Branham's message of hybridizing the two together. But it was not rock and roll in the church because he preached against rock and roll in the church. Okay, he was like, that's too far, basically. So, but the thing about it is that lo and behold, you bring it up 40, 50 years to where we got to the third coming days and the days that we're in now, whatever age you want to call this we're in now. You bring it up to today, and lo and behold, what do we have? Rock and roll in the church, as I've said, because we get a revelation of understanding off of these songs, okay, these rock and roll songs. So, what I'm saying is that in William Branham's day, rock and roll in the church was not correct for that time. It was not the message of that day and hour. Okay, but we ended up listening in the next message, the second ride and such, and whatever we're in today, we ended up listening to rock and roll anyhow. Well, now, how could you look at William Branham and say, well, Brother Branham, you must have been wrong because, hey, turned out we did end up listening to rock and roll. I guess you're going to have to go back and apologize to the Pentecostals. Okay, no. How this works is that by the time, see, it's just like the same concept here. You can't compare that world. You can't compare the world we're in now to the world we're going to be in the future. It don't work. Okay, by the time you get to the future, everything else has changed around what you're trying to talk about, and it don't work anymore. It don't equate the same way. So what happened was by the time that we got to the point to where we were listening to rock and roll in the church, everything around the concept of listening to rock and roll in the church, including itself, had changed. Okay, it didn't work the same. It didn't. You can't think about it the same. It didn't. William Branham said he was against rock and roll in the church. He was right in his day. He was right. Okay, but lo and behold, we didn't end up listening to rock and roll. But by the time we did, by the time the future caught up, by the time we had pierced through the curtain of time to the point to where rock and roll in the church made sense. The whole world had changed. The whole way that let's say, what was the world spiritually speaking? It's the way that you look at the message, at spirituality entirely, the world. Okay? The world, the way we viewed spirituality entirely had totally changed by that point, and rock and roll in the church was it was a total different view of things, but we did end up listening to rock and roll. So that's what I'm saying. What's going on here is that this electric car is going at some point to make sense. It's going to, as we pierce through the curtain of time, as time goes on, as 20, 30 years from now, or whatever it is, as time goes on, I certainly suspect that the electric car will make more and more sense in that world. It'll work for that world, but the world around it will be so totally different, including it, because electric cars will evolve too. Okay, that's like I said, the way we looked at rock and roll evolved. The world around it evolved. Okay, so everything had totally changed. Okay, but at the time that William Branham was saying, don't have rock and roll in the church, he was 100% right. Okay, because that was not the message for that day. And I'm going to take the same concept and I'm going to apply it to this day. I'm telling you all that just like you can, I'm telling you right now, an electric car is not the way to go. Okay, it's not, for all intents and purposes, it's not the way to go right now. Okay, you won't come out best in most situations, let's say. Now, like I said, certain situations, yes. Okay, but what I'm talking about here is a generalization all across the board. It's just not going to work. Now, if somebody's got the means to have an electric car and and they don't have to drive very far and whatever, it might work for them. Okay, it might work for them in particular, but on the whole, it don't work. And that's what William Branham was. He didn't get into the details. He just said, on the whole, rock and roll in the church don't work. Okay, so we're not doing details here. We're doing I'm painting kind of a broad picture. Okay. So, and like I said, even if an electric car works for you specifically right now, it's not going to work in 30 years from now. The whole system is, like I said, there's still going to be problems even if it does kind of work for you right now a little better than some other people. Like I said, you still got to, what if you got let's say you got a home charging station and you can charge that electric car up and you don't have to drive very far daily. What if you got to take a trip? You might assume that rather than taking a trip across the country and having to stop at the electric stations every 200, 300 miles, just as far as your car will go, your electric car will go, and then recharge sitting there for 30 minutes, you might just decide to go get you might decide it's a better option to go get a rental car that was an internal combustion engine, just drive it across country, because it would make more sense to drive an electric car. So what I'm saying is even if it works in your situation, it still doesn't work very good across the board. Okay, so because I'm not saying don't buy an electric car. It's not what I mean. If we're talking regular cars out here, it's not what I'm saying. But whatever. Maybe you can make that work. But for all intents and purposes, it don't work. Okay, it don't. Let's just say it don't work. It don't work as perhaps well as other things do. Okay, like I said, it's the age will come for that, I assume. And the whole world will be changed around it to where that will work brilliantly. And it's like rock and roll in the church. The things that the Pentecostals were saying come around to where it did work, but by the time we got there, the whole world had changed. Okay, no Pentecostal ever, probably conceived the idea that Jesus had already come back, that this change of the way we thought about holiness and everything that we have now since the third coming is totally different. Okay, so it works to where rock and roll, listening to rock and roll and getting a revelation off of it works. It works now because everything has changed around it. Okay, so I hope you all get my point of what I'm saying here. So what I'm saying is you bring that up to spirituality in this day, this love divine message, the way they do things with throwing everything out, like throwing whatever it is out. I mean, that's pretty much been the idea. It's like rock and roll in the church. It's like, throwing out things. Okay. Then that will come. That will work. That will one day work. Bear with me. What the love divine is saying right now, in a way, it will work in the same way, but the world will be totally changed around it. That will work one day, okay? But it will work. It won't work, and it'll be under such a different premise that it really won't be anything like what we're talking about now. It's like you take rock and roll in the church of the Pentecostals. Like I said, everything, by the time what they were saying come around to work, rock and roll in the church, the whole world had changed around it so much that it wasn't even comparable. You couldn't really compare what was going on in the third coming days, whenever we come around to the conclusion rock and roll in the church was fine, compared to what was going on in the Pentecostal days. Everything had totally changed. The second ride had totally had changed the world, the way we viewed spirituality, so much that it did not compare. And that's why I'm saying, by the time the love divine ideology out here, by the time it works, by the time it hypothetically, by default, because rock and roll in the church only ever ended up working by default. Okay, by the time the love divine ideology works by default, everything around it will have changed so much that it won't even be comparable. Okay, that's why I'm trying to tell you all this futurism, it only works in such a kind of way, and by the time that it works that way, God Himself will have evolved to the point that it will look totally different, and Christ and God and Jehovah and the whole thing, or whatever it looks to be at that time, will be so totally different that it'll make that work, and you won't have to throw out God. Okay, you won't have to. It'll just dovetail together. Like we said, the rock and roll dovetailed. It dovetailed with the message. Okay, it wasn't in conflict like it was in William Branham's day. It was in conflict then. But one day, see, what's going to happen is that this is going to dovetail together, and it won't be in conflict with it. Okay, but right now it's in conflict with it. If you throw out these things, if you throw out God now, it's in conflict. Okay. So anyway, it's really in conflict. Now, so it's like buying an electric car is in conflict with the general terms. Let me try to explain that. Buying an electric car is in conflict with general terms of the operation on the ground out here in the fields, or the average person, okay? And it's the same thing with that love divine message of throwing God out and this and that and everything. It's in conflict with the common person on the ground out here. It's like rock and roll was in conflict with the common message in William Branham's day, but it ended up working by default. So I'll say this: their versions of it. Let me put it this way: their versions, the love divine versions of no God, will one day work by default in the future at some point. But by then, everything around it will have changed so much that it won't even be what it is now. No God won't even be what it is now. So I'm telling you, it just don't work. Okay, rock and roll in the church in William Branham's day just didn't work. And I'm telling you, this stuff today, the same futuristic spirit that the Pentecostals had brought up to today, which is the love divine message, and this modern equivalent of rock and roll in the church or no God or whatever, it don't work right now. Okay, it didn't work for the Pentecostals then, and it don't work. Their same spirit of nature of things does not work right now. It don't work. It don't work. Like I said, in the field, out in the field, out in the average people, across the board, the whole thing, it just don't work. Okay. So, anyway, let's talk about the things that do work. What worked in William Branham's day was William Branham's message. And what works in this day is William Branham's message. Brother Cook, what are you saying now? Are you saying we should go back and go back to like the William Branham's message in 1962 and listen to that and try to explain what's going on today? No. Okay. But like I said, these spirits of things come back. The Pentecostal spirit came back in the love divine message. Okay. So the William Branham type equivalent message has got to come back in the spirit of that has got to come back in this day too. The spirit of the Baptists has got to be here in this day too, or whoever else it might be. Okay, and like I said, William Branham's message was the hybrid. It was the hybrid between blubber and bones. Okay, so that's what I propose today. I propose the same spirit, nature, of way of looking at the message that existed in William Branham's day, brought up to today. Okay, I'm not saying we need to listen to William Branham in 1962 and try to explain what's going on now. Okay, I'm saying that we need a modern William Branham equivalent, spiritual equivalent to explain what's going on today. Okay, like I said, I was listening to William Branham a while back, and I hope this sermon don't end up too long. I don't mean to hold you too long, but anyway, I was listening to William Branham a while back, and something I think about 1962 when the Cuban Missile Crisis happened, and everybody was like at the edge of nuclear war and all this stuff. And so anyway, William Branham was talking about three things. He was talking about doctors. He was talking about economic conditions. I listened to it and I was like, you got to be kidding me, man. He was talking. I can't remember what sermon it was. It was what was it? The sign of the prophet or something like that. Anyway, he was talking. I was listening to him, and then he started to talk about. He was talking about economic conditions. He was talking about right down the line, right next to each other. I can give you the quote if you want it. I put it out a while back. Economic conditions, the nuclear war that everybody was like on the edge of, the Cuban Missile Crisis, and essentially geopolitical woes. And then he was talking, and then the third thing you mentioned was that the doctors, he talked to a doctor, and the doctor said, man, we've got this technology to where we can we can heal this and that, and Brother Branham was like, good, but anyway, so in a way good. So, but what do you have today, right now? If I were to venture to guess, if I were to put a time frame on this, I tend to wonder if we're not right at the Cuban Missile Crisis right now. I wonder if we're not right at 1962 right now. I just wonder. Now, this is a bit of I don't even know if I'd call it a prediction, but maybe. We've got a lot of things that seem to be setting up exactly right around the same way right now that we're setting up then, because, like I said, talking about doctors, economic woes, and geopolitical war woes, okay? Well, what have we got now? We just come out of COVID. There's your doctors. Doctors trying to do this and that with COVID and injections and all this and that. There's number one. Number two is we got economic woes with gas prices going up, okay? And number three, we got war, okay? Right down the line. And not only that, it's the same country that's at war, okay? So William Branham, what he said back in 1962, you could overlap it right in this day, right now, and it overlays perfectly with what's going on right now. So that's what I'm saying. We had William Branham back then, and we had him saying these things, and then bring it up to today, and what he was saying then, does what William Branham was talking about then, does it work perfectly for this day? Yes and no. Because the concepts of everything he was talking about come back exactly right now what we're talking about. But could you have dropped him here? If we could time travel William Branham, could you drop him here and him talk about these things? He wouldn't know what was going on. He would know what was going on because he could understand how things, how the concepts of these same things that he was dealing with, but he wouldn't know how they worked. He wouldn't know what we were talking about. He wouldn't know if we said COVID, he'd be like, what? What are you talking about? But he would know. I mean, it's medical nonetheless. And if we were talking about, war and the threat of nuclear war, he'd be like, oh yeah, but he wouldn't, but he would be comparing it to like, them landing missiles in Cuba. Okay, he wouldn't be comparing it to what we're dealing with now here. You see. And if we were talking about economic woes, he'd be thinking about something else. He wouldn't be thinking about the way our economic concerns are now, So, but the concepts work. but it don't work. Like I said, William Branham, he would know, but he wouldn't know. Okay, if you could time travel him here, but if you had a modern William Branham equivalent, then the whole thing will work. Okay, and that's what we need, and that's what we've got here. We've got this the system. If you've got an understanding of the vision out here, of the vision of life, and how things work, then you do have a modern William Branham. That William Branham is not somewhere else. William Branham's right here where he's always been. Christians don't die, after all. So, that spirit nature of William Branham, that way of looking at things, that good way of looking at things, regardless, it's like, yes, I've had, I guess you might say, debates with people that didn't know nothing about William Branham, but, can we not all come to the conclusion, regardless of what the situation is, can we not come to the conclusion that William Branham, regardless of whether you think he's a prophet or anything else, he had some, to me, the point is that he made sense. Okay, he just simply made sense. That it don't matter where you run it. If you watch, it's like if you're trying to understand what's going on in the world today, secularly, nothing to do with spirituality, but just try to figure out, if you turn on the news, then the best way that you can I have found that the best way that you can try to get a good understanding of things is if you watch the right-wing news and the left-wing news together and put them together and take in all that information and try to make some reasonable analysis of it, then that's probably the best you're going to do if all you got's, like network news, okay, to watch. You don't have anything else to try to figure it out. But, if that's all you got, unless you're privy to some sort of special information that I'm not privy to, then the best way to try to finagle together the best idea of what's really going on is to watch both right and left-wing news. Okay, well, that's exactly what William Branham was saying. He was saying that you had left-wingers and right-wingers in the message back in the day, the blubber and the bones, and he was saying put it together and you'll have the best understanding of it. So, like I say, this transcends everything. Were you talking about spiritual or not? It was just a good idea. Okay, he just had a good idea. And that good idea comes back today in whatever you're doing. Like I said, natural news, or if you're trying to figure out the spiritual news. See here, this is the spiritual news. Okay, what I do is I watch both of them and try to put it together. I watch the right wingers out here and the left wingers out here, and I try to put it together and make sense out of it. Okay, and so anyway, I watch the Third Coming and I watch the Love Divine, and I try to put it together and make the most sense out of it. Okay. So, and that's why I proposed the hybrid engine. The hybrid engine was gas and electric. Okay, it is gas and electric. So I proposed that, spiritually speaking, now I'm not saying go out and buy a hybrid. I'm not saying don't go out and buy an electric car. I'm not talking about, that's not my kingdom, folks. I'm not talking about the natural cars out here. It's not my kingdom. I'm not fighting for that kingdom. I'm not telling you to go buy this kind of car or that kind of car. Like I said, whatever works for you, whatever. But but this is my kingdom. The spiritual kingdom here is my kingdom. And in my spiritual kingdom, I am proposing the hybrid car. Makes the most sense right now. Because a hybrid car, you can put gas in it, and you can go all the way across the country just like anything. Okay. But it has a battery and electric in it to kick in whenever it's economical to do so. And it saves you gas. Okay. And it does cost a little extra, but anyway, that's just the way it works. But if let's just say if gas keeps going up, the more gas goes up, then the more this makes sense, because you're not going to be so concerned about the cost of the car if gas is thousands of dollars per year or whatever your situation might be. Then it's going to make more sense to go ahead and pay a little extra to have a little higher tech situation to save the money on the gas. That's how it works. I mean, I know you all can do math. So, everybody understands gas mileage. At this point, we especially do. Whatever you're driving, whether you're driving a motorcycle, whether you're driving a car, whatever you're driving, we all know gas mileage. Okay, so, and then and then you have the regular internal combustion engine. Okay, and that's, like I said, that's kind of like the third coming, model out here. And that there's a lot can be said for that too, because it's a tried and true design. It's not overly technical. It's cheaper, and it's got its own merits. So it really, the drawback is that it's, as gas gets more expensive, it becomes less economical. And I think it's the point of my. I don't have anything against third coming mentality out here, but I realize that as time goes on, that ideology is just going to become less and less spiritually economical to continue on with. It's it's the sun is setting on the day of the third coming mentality, but I kind of think of it this way. Like I said, whenever you had Judah and Israel, and the Judah was obviously that's kind of like the third coming equivalent of today, and they were the good kings. All they were doing was down there holding down the temple, but that was what they were supposed to be doing. And they were good kings, and the wicked kings were the ones over in Israel. So, I got some respect for the good kings. Maybe that's all they were doing was holding down the temple, but that was all they were supposed to do, like everybody else. They're doing what they were supposed to do, but they were the good kings in the process of doing that. So that's their job. That's their job, and it's a fine job. And I'm not even saying that the wicked kings of Israel are not doing what they're supposed to be doing out here. The wicked kings, the love divine people, the wicked kings of Israel and the lying prophets, they're doing just exactly what they're supposed to be doing out here. Okay. So anyway, but some things you have more regard for than others, I've come to learn. I used to kind of think it the other way around. I used to kind of think it the other way around, but I've kind of switched my mentality a little bit, and I think it was natural to do so. That I've got more respect for them. I've got more respect for the third coming people than I got for the love divine. That's just the way it is. I've come to learn that over time, and I think, a person in the middle kind of learns that over time, because, it's like the scripture where he talked about they called up the prophet, and the king of Israel and the king of Judah was there, and the prophet, he said that if it weren't for the king of that he regarded the king of Judah, then, because the prophet was kind of like the guy in the middle, he's kind of the hybrid guy, and if it weren't for a prophet, okay, the prophet is in ancient Israel, he was a hybrid because he was an Israelite. They called up an Israelite prophet, so Israel meant kind of to go forward, but he believed in serving Jehovah like Judah did. So he was a hybrid, because the Israelites, they weren't serving Jehovah necessarily, but they were going forward. So, and then Judah wasn't really moving anywhere, but they were serving Jehovah. So the prophet was the guy in the middle. He was the hybrid. He was serving Jehovah and he was trying to move forward at the same time. It's a hybrid combination. Okay, so but he had the prophet. Whenever they called him up, the Israelite prophet, because they was getting ready to go fight somewhere, and the king of Judah and the king of Israel was there, he came up and he said, if it weren't that I respect the king of Judah, I wouldn't even look to the king of Israel. I wouldn't even look at him. And that's exactly the way I feel about it out here. I have respect for the third coming because I know they're serving Jehovah. Okay, they might just be down there guarding a temple, but that's what they're supposed to be doing. The good king's down there guarding the temple. They ain't moved, but they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, and they're serving Jehovah. Okay, now the Israelites out here, the Israelite king, I ain't got no respect for that, because these are the wicked kings. Now they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, but they're the wicked kings, and I ain't got no respect for them, because they're throwing out Jehovah. They're throwing out how they throw out Jehovah is they throw out the concepts of these simple concepts, simple biblical concepts. And I realize it sounds old now, but these are concepts that are good. Regardless of, like I said, it's like William Branham. That concept of William Branham was just good no matter what. I mean, call him a prophet, God, whatever. Even if you don't think he was a prophet, like I said, the concept of taking two things, two extremes, and putting them together was just simply a good concept. I mean, I don't care who you're talking to out here, what the situation might be. You could be talking to scientists about something else, and that would make sense. Okay, so what I'm saying is, biblical or no, they're throwing out, the love divine people are throwing out just simply good concepts. Okay, that it just don't make any sense. It's just simple as that. It just don't make any sense. It's not good practice. Okay, regardless of what you're talking about. So that's what I'm saying. I got no respect for that. I got no respect for throwing out simple, good concepts that have gotten us this far. Now, you need to move forward. I'm all for moving forward. That's what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to move us forward. I'm trying to move us forward in a way that we don't throw out the sensible, good concepts that have got us this far. Okay, that's very simple. It's a hybrid. Take the good common sense things that got us this far, and keep those, but go forward. Okay, that's a simple concept. It's a hybrid, simple concept that has worked throughout all of time with these prophets. That's what I'm trying to do here. Okay, you can't go throwing out the concepts that got us this far. But you can move forward. Okay, see, it's like they seem to think that if you don't believe it the way they believe it, then you're not moving forward. That is a total misconception. You can move forward and not believe it the way that they believe it. You can move forward without throwing out every concept that was good. Okay, you can do that. Okay, that's one time. Hit it in the middle. Hit the one in the middle. You ever watch Rocky 4? He said he come back. He'd been beaten on, been in that boxing match, and he comes back and he sits down and he says, "I see 3 of them out there," and he's like, his brother-in-law, he's trainer. He looks at him and he says, "Hit the one in the middle, Rock," and he said, "Okay." So he goes, "Hit the one in the middle." That's what I'm telling you. If you see 3 of them out here, hit the one in the middle. Now, I want to get on to something else here before I'm done. Talking about seeing signs. I see signs all the time. I see signs everywhere. Sign, everywhere a sign. There's a little rock and roll for you. So, I'd like to talk about some signs that I see specifically that I can't help but go around. It's just, this might get a little bit more into my personal life, but this is stuff I'd like to tell. Just simple, everyday stuff that goes right along with the message. Like I said, this might get a little personal, but I hope it's all right. Okay. So, what I said a long time ago that, and this might be repeating myself, but I'm going to repeat myself. Some things bear repeating. Uh-oh. Things bear repeating, huh? Well, that's that kind of flies in the face of everything being new, doesn't it? Not everything, but some things bear repeating. Okay, so that's why that I don't have so much beef now. I don't have beef with the third coming because some things bear repeating. If you think about it, some things bear repeating. Sometimes the third coming mentality of things, that the guys guarding the temple, what was the temple? The temple is the original understanding, the Solomonic son of David understanding of the third coming, because it was the son of David age. Okay, maybe I'm preaching a sermon here that's a different sermon, but anyway, that understanding is, sometimes that bears repeating. Okay, sometimes the Rehoboam, like I said, you had King Jeroboam and King Rehoboam, and King Rehoboam was king of Israel in the stead of Solomon, and then King Jeroboam went off and started the wicked Israelite kings. Then I said Rehoboam was a redo, and that's why I said you got the third coming. The third coming people out here, a redo message. Okay, well, sometimes things bear repeating. Okay, so, I got respect for that. Okay, so anyhow, I've got all kinds of stuff that just happens in my natural life that I just can't. It all dovetails with this and makes so much sense. So anyway, let me get on with it. Like I said, that I had said back in the day that one day, without going too much into it, that one day the message was going to split off at the 38th parallel, because what happened in the wars was that it split off, and it eventually got up to a point to where East and West fought at the 38th parallel in Cold War. Okay, that was in Korea. Okay, so without going too deep into it, The 38th parallel, if you bring that over to America, and you run the 38th parallel, runs not only through Korea, but it runs right through America. And I said that what I meant was, I didn't exactly know how it was going to work out, but we do now. That the third coming ended up on the bottom of the 38th parallel, and the Love Divine people ended up, primarily, this is how it worked, on the top of the 38th parallel, north of the 38th parallel, and the third coming people ended up south of the 38th parallel. Generally speaking, everybody that believed it here in America, that's the third coming message, that's how they ended up, okay? And then we fought the Cold War. This has been a Cold War of spiritual understanding. So, and not only that, the things that they believe match up with the West mentality and the East mentality, because the East, the Love Diviners, what was the mentality of the East? It was communism, which was to make everything equal, one, kind of goes against individualism, etc., etc. And then the people on the bottom, the people that were the West was fighting in South Korea, for South Korea, and that what's their ideas on things is capitalism, which is kind of winners and losers economically, good and bad, which is the third coming mentality of, hey, we believe in good and evil, essentially. Okay, that's capitalism. Spiritual capitalism is good and evil, and spiritual communism is where everybody, it's oneness, it's Love Divine oneness. That's not hard, folks. Okay, all right. Y'all can call me whatever you want, but that's not hard. That's very simple, and that's true. Okay, so anyway, what I found out was that the 38th parallel, if you run it across the United States, I'll give you a map here. Let me give you a quick map. This is going to be a terrible map, but whatever, It's Virginia. There's West Virginia. Okay, and let's see, how's it go? Something like this. Can't remember exactly. Ohio. Okay, and here's Indiana. Okay, and then let's see, how's Kentucky go? I think it goes something like this. That's Virginia. And then Kentucky. Okay. All right. Okay. This is primarily the area where everything has went on in the United States for the past 50, 100 years. Okay, with like the spiritual stuff. Because see, the Ohio River runs down like this. Okay. Now here's Jeffersonville, Indiana. This is where, roughly where William Branham was supposed to have been, he was down there baptizing on the Ohio River, and I guess that's where it was supposed to have taken place. He was down there baptizing, and the light comes, and the voice comes and says, "As John the Baptist forerun the first coming of Christ, your message shall forerun the second coming of Christ." Okay, it was on the Ohio River. This is the Ohio River. Okay, so that's significant. We know, see, John the Baptist baptized on the Jordan River in Israel. So we know when things repeat, William Branham was John the Baptist. He was a spirit of Elijah, which come on John the Baptist, same thing. We know that this Ohio River must be the Jordan River in terms now. Okay, this is Israel. This is Israel. Israel has come back here. Okay, now I'm not saying Israel's not other places too, because, personally speaking, I think that in a way, you could certainly make a claim, at least in the terms of spiritually speaking, that Israel is the Philippines and a lot of other places perhaps. But I mean, that's probably where the bulk of all the believers are at that believe this anyhow. So in a way, you would have to say that's Israel in a way too. Okay, but anyway, for us over here in America, this is Israel. It's pretty much Indiana, Ohio, West Virginia, and Kentucky. Okay, because that's where all the stuff going on. So anyway, so you had, and this is the Jordan River because that's where William Branham was baptizing at. Okay, so the message you had the people back in the Third Coming days. All this was you got all your churches was generally in this area. You got church up in Indiana. You got Dayton, Ohio, which is Torrey Alonzo. You had church in Charleston, West Virginia. You got church down here in Kentucky. Where else? I don't know. You had you got like way over here. You'd have like church in New Mexico, and there was kind of like there was kind of like three. I don't know, kind of like three heads of the north and three heads of the south, really, that split off in this 38th parallel split, okay, of the message. So anyway, the 38th parallel runs across here. Something like this. Something to this effect. Okay, so, and like I said, what happened was the 38th parallel, everybody north of this line split off and went one way, and everybody south split off and went another one. Here's more like, there's a church down here, and a church would be way over here. That's gross misrepresentation. But anyway, 3 and 3, pretty much. Okay, of course, some people on either side didn't necessarily split that way. But anyway, that's pretty much, that's what happened. So, Third Coming territory, Love Divine territory. Judah, Kingdom of Judah in the south, kind of like south of the Jordan River, Ohio River. Oh, Ohio, supposedly in Shawnee terms, I remember Torrey Alonzo talked about this. Ohio, in Shawnee Indians, the Shawnee Indians lived here originally. Ohio meant upper heavens. Okay, so the Ohio River is the river of the upper heavens, if you think about it that way. What's the Jordan River? Jordan River in Israel. When you die, I don't believe in the old version of death exactly, but that meant you crossed over the Jordan. It was you died, and whenever you was dying, the breath's going out of your body, that's you crossed over Jordan, you crossed over into heaven. Okay, whatever your version of that is now, but anyway, the Jordan River was the river you crossed over and went into heaven. So this is the river of the upper heavens. What I'm saying is, folks, this is the same thing. We got the same thing over again. So then you can start to plot things. Okay. Now, and then you got, like I said, Third Coming down here, Love Divine people up here. Okay, this is the hybrid. What I'm telling you is I live right here, practically on the 38th parallel. What I'm telling you is that even my geographical location of the way things ended up here is the hybrid. I live right on the line. Okay, I'm not crazy here. I can't help but notice these signs. I got so many signs going on around me, and like people tell me I'm wrong all the time, and then I drive down the road and go to work every day and see all these signs, and everything's telling me I'm not wrong, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I got to go with what I see. Okay, so anyway, but like I said, I'm trying to present the hybrid message here, the hybrid message between essentially the Third Coming and the Love Divine. That's what I'm trying to promote here. That's what I'm trying to get across, because that's, anyway, I think you all get the point. So, and what I'm saying is I live right here on this dividing line, on the 38th parallel of this dividing line of where those two messages split off. Okay, then, so, well, I don't know exactly how that line works, but anyway, see, I work up here next to Charleston, okay? So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about my daily life. I hope that's okay. About these signs that I can't help but see. Let me draw this a little better. Okay, I work up here next to Charleston. This is Charleston, West Virginia, and I live about yay here, something like that. Okay, so every day, I drive. Well, not every day. I drive from where I live in a place called Beckley, West Virginia. I drive up the road and I cross this 38th parallel. Okay, and I can't help but notice these signs, and everything is just crazy how this works out. It blows me away. And if anybody, it's like, if anybody's going to try to convince me I'm wrong, you're just too late, because I've just seen too much. I just know there's no way that this can be. I've seen too many signs. Okay, so anyway, as I'm driving up this road here, a lot of things. It's just crazy how everything works out, because, and it works. It does tell us right exactly with what's going on. I got to looking at this and I was like, well, there's got to be, if I can plot modern Israel here, then I should be able to go back on a map of ancient Israel, and I should be able to plot exactly where I'm at on the map in ancient Israel. Okay, I knew that much, and then I got to working on to try to do it. So in ancient Israel, like I said, if this is the Jordan River, which we know it is, then I was like, well, what are the geographical features of the other areas in ancient Israel? And in ancient Israel, if you go east of the Ohio River, or of the Jordan River in Israel, you get over into the land of Gilead, and West Virginia would essentially be the land of Gilead, and that's where they were kind of like they're kind of like a combination of people. They were not really kind of like a little bit different of a breed. There was guys east of the river. So anyway, and then I was like, well, what else can I find? Well, in ancient Israel, there's a river that cuts over this way. Now, I'm not saying I've got all this figured out, but I'm certainly onto something here. There was a river that cut over, like, in ancient Israel, and run over here like this. And I'm like, well, if I can plot that, then I should be able to figure out where I'm at in this modern day thing here and figure it out. And I got down here and I was like, now if this river, it's called the Jabbok River if you want to look it up in Israel. And like I say, y'all might think I'm crazy. Well, if I'm crazy, I'm happy. I can tell you that. So anyway, this river that would, in ancient Israel, would cut off to the east of the Jordan. But I proposed that it cuts off, there's a river that cuts off to the east of the Ohio, like I said, the modern Jordan. Then that would put, everything down here somewhere. Okay, so I got to looking at this and I was like, well, I should be able to figure out. I was driving from my house to Charleston to work, and I got to this. There's a sign there on the road that says, you are now crossing the 38th parallel, because the 38th parallel runs right there, and in honor of Korean War veterans. Okay, so I'm like, well, that's probably significant. Then the name of that little place that I cross through every day is called Mahan. It's a place called Mahan, West Virginia. Okay, then, I was like, man, Mahan, man. Okay, and then the mile marker where you cross the 30th parallel at Mahan, West Virginia, is mile marker number 66. I propose that it's like, and not only that, it's like 66, somewhere in that area is like mile marker on the interstate, because the interstate's got mile markers every mile you go. It's got a marker, a little green sign. And right there, basically in the town of Mahan, when you cross right there to 30th parallel, it's roughly at 66, mile marker 66.5. Okay, so I figure it's probably, if you go on up a little bit, it's 66.6. Okay, so what we have is we have Mahan, man, at mile marker number 666, crossing the 38th parallel. And there's a road there that's Route 15. So, 1 plus 5 is 6. Man, the route's number 6, the number of a man. It's mile marker 666. Okay, this is the place of man. This is where man dwells. Man dwells right in the middle of all this. Okay, this is the middle point. Okay, and so anyway, on the 38th parallel, the dividing line. Okay, so, and that's my, like I said, that's my message out here is the dividing line. So anyway, but that wasn't the thing. I got to thinking about it, and I was like, so wait a minute. If this river cuts off to the east of the Jordan, then that means that this place, there should be a place in Israel. I should be able to go back to a place in Israel that would directly correlate, ancient Israel, that would directly correlate off of that, roughly off of that river, that is that place of Mahan. That is the exact place. Okay, so I thought, well, I've tried that before. I've tried all this stuff of trying to plot this stuff. You go, you look back, and you're like, well, it's hard to determine. So anyway, I'm like, right on that river in ancient Israel. I went back and looked at a map of ancient Israel, and I said, right on that river there should be a place that is exactly Mahan. Okay, the dividing line of everything there. And so anyway, I looked it up, and I did not find a place called Mahan. Well, Mahan is spelled like this, Mahan. Okay. I hope I'm not boring everybody here. I think I'm boring my wife, but anyway, I found this. Like I said, the name of this place in West Virginia is called Mahan, the dividing line. 666. Everything lines up 666. 666. You name it. Mahan. Okay. All right. I did not, but I looked back in the ancient Israel geographical map, and I did not, and I'm like, I lined it all up with the rivers and everything, and I'm like, right here should be Mahan. Okay, so then I started looking what towns are near there, and I'm like, I did not find a place called Mahan in ancient Israel there, but exactly at that point, I did find a place called Mahanaim. Mahan. How do you spell it? Mahanaim. In Israel, there's a place right there exactly where I plotted it. There's a place right there exactly where Mahan should be, right there roughly on the river. There's a place called Mahanaim in Israel. Okay, if you read the old ancient books of the Kings, that Mahanaim was where David fled to whenever his son was after him. Okay, so because his son wanted to take the throne, or so I can't remember. Absalom, was it Absalom? Anyway, but yeah, Mahanaim. Well, I would like to show you in bigger terms, but my wife found it here. It was Mahanaim is a place mentioned a number of times by the Bible, said to be near Jabbok, which is the river, the Kanawha River that I proposed was going east because it was the only one that seemed to fit. East said to be near Jabbok, which is Mahanaim's near the Kanawha River, or the New River, and beyond the Jordan. Okay, so anyway, thanks, wifey. So anyway, I propose that this place here is actually Mahanaim in modern terms. I propose that the Ohio River is the Jordan River, and that this place is actually Mahanaim. It's actually Israel. I can actually plot a place exactly on a map where something's at, where it repeated itself. Like I said, it's not Mahan, West Virginia, but it's Mahanaim in Israel. Okay. So anyway, all this stuff, 666, everything lines up. And I'm like, seeing all these signs, and literally signs, like road marker signs, but signs spiritually. And so I'm like, okay, well, that's interesting. Right there in the 38th parallel. Okay, but here's where it gets even weirder. I thought that was pretty weird itself. But here's where it gets even weirder. As I go to work, every day as I go to work, I listen to the radio. Not every day, but I listen to the radio, and like I said, the third coming people, everything south of this is your third coming ideology out here, and it's kind of the redo, the repeat. It's like I said, it's King Rehoboam, because King Rehoboam reigned in Judah in the south, and Jeroboam reigned in Israel in the north. So anyway, but it's kind of that redo message, and so on the way from my house to Charleston to work, I run into whenever I'm tuning in on the radio to try to get me some tunes, if I'm not listening to William Branham or something or whatever, then if I'm listening to music, then or whatever else I'm listening, I'm whatever. Anyway, uh, if I'm tuning in to radio, then like I said, these guys down here are your redo. You're kind of like your classics. It's a classic message, and then up here is like your rock and roll in the church bunch. Okay, so as I leave my house, right when I cross Mahan, see, down here where I live, we don't have no good rock and roll station that you can pick up down here as I leave my house in the south of the line. But we do have a great classic country music station. Okay, so I listen, and it fades out right when you go across the line at Mahan. That's exactly where it starts to fade out. You can't hear it anymore, just static. Okay, look, guys, this stuff cannot be. I've seen too much. You just can't convince me anymore. I'm too far gone. Okay. When I start in the car, I've got classic country music. Okay, I have got classics, and I know it's going to be a good song. I just about know it's going to be. They're going to play Garth Brooks, or they're going to play George Strait, or they're going to play Johnny Cash, or George Jones. I know it's going to be a good song. Okay, so I'm listening to classic country music. It might not be new, but it's good. Sometimes, sometimes older things are still good, even if you've heard them 100 times. So anyway, as I'm going, I got that classic country station all the way to Mahan at the 38th parallel where it switches, where it statics out. You can't hear it no more. And then from there on to work, I got a good rock station, a good rock and roll station that's called Everything That Rocks. Okay, so if you think about it, well, it's an interesting rock station, let's say, but it's got its issues, but it's anyway. But that's where, see, I can't pick up right on this line from south of the line. All I can pick up is classic country, and then north of the line is where the rock and roll station in the north starts to come in. I can't pick them up, one or the other. If I'm above or below, I can't pick the other one up. It's crazy. And I'm like, you think about that. I got classic country in the south, and I got rock and roll in the north, and they die right there on that line. One won't go south, and one won't go north. Okay, and what I say is this Love Divine is rock and roll in the church, and in the south, the Third Coming is a classic country music, essentially. Okay, and so anyway, in the north, and the rock and roll station, the problem with the rock and roll station is, see, I know if I got that classic country music station, I know I'm going to get a good song, but I've heard them 100 times over and over. That's the drawback. Okay, but but then in the north, in the rock and roll station, it's Everything That Rocks. So there's some good songs in there, but the problem is they tend to play too much. I think too much new music that's not necessarily any good. Okay. I think their idea is that they want to be broad spectrumed and try to play music of all types. That way, they can claim that they're Everything That Rocks is their slogan. But they tend to play new music that's really just not that good, I think. I mean, it's like, and I kind of think that's kind of the same thing as Love Divine. The way I look at it is that you kind of get some good classic rock songs in there, but also you get a bunch of, was it dead? Okay, you kind of get some classic rock. When I say rock is kind of like it's modern music compared to country, but so I don't know if you can understand where I'm going at with that. But anyway, they're playing a lot of new stuff amidst the good rock, let's say, the good modern type of music, which is rock and roll. They play a lot of new stuff that's not really all that good. So I can't really listen to that, and it's just, so anyway, I kind of think it's the same thing with the Love Divine message. I hope I'm not going too far out here, but it's the same thing with the Love Divine message. Just like I can listen to it, but it's got a bunch of new stuff in it that's just not really all that good. And it's not going to probably ever be all that good either. It's like a lot of these songs, will probably not be songs that we'll be listening to 20, 30 years from now, like the classic country songs. Those songs are pretty much timeless. And there's a lot of good rock and roll songs too. So I listen to, I go up the road. Sometimes I listen to William Branham. Sometimes I listen to the Love Divine preaching. I listen to all of it, and to try to make a good conclusion out of it. And so anyway, that's is it going to die, wifey? How long longer do we have?
I have 10%.
Okay. So anyway, let me finish off with this. I just wanted to say that it's like, I don't know if you can get what I'm saying, but rock and roll on the top, classic country in the South, and it's just funny how it all works out. And I just got these signs and just like, there's no way. This is just crazy how this works out. This has got to mean something. So anyway, the last thing I wanted to say is this: is that rock and roll and country. Basically, you got rock and roll and country. The South is country, and the North is rock and roll. And that's pretty much how it is in this country. The South in the United States likes rock and roll, likes country, typically, and the North likes rock and roll. Okay, so I kind of think of the Third Coming people out here is kind of like country music, and the Love Divine people is kind of like rock and roll. And how it worked was that country was a little bit before rock and roll, and then Elvis came in with rock and roll. And so the rock and roll is afterwards, a little bit afterwards of the country music. So the Love Divine's kind of like a little bit afterwards of the country music, the Third Coming mentality. But I think the problem I have is with people that they think, well, rock and roll, so just listen to that and don't listen to anything else. I like it all, really, in a way. And people think, country music still exists today. If you think country music is irrelevant today, you're crazy, because Tennessee, the Grand Ole Opry down in Tennessee and Nashville, Tennessee is huge. Country music's huge. Okay, still to this day, rock and roll is big, obviously, but country music's still huge too. So if you just want to bury your head in the sand and go with this stuff and just listen to rock and roll and just call everybody else crazy because they don't listen to rock and roll, I mean, there's so many country music people out here in the United States. That would be a stupid statement. I would call you stupid if you. I'm sorry, but I mean, if you want to look at it that way, that's just crazy. You can't just do that, and that's what I'm saying. What gets me with the rock and roll people is they just utterly cannot stand the country music people, and I'm like, a lot of times. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to put the two together and call it like it is. I'm trying to say that the rock and roll people, where they screw up to me is they think that they're just it and that's it, and that's just not it. It's not the truth. There's lots more to do out here, lots more things. So anyway, I think we're losing battery, and I gotta go. Anyway, see you later.